Everything unusual began with a video sent by our senior classmate. In the image, a dark silhouette was crouching. At first, we thought it was a trailer for some horror game, until we saw his unmistakable guitar in the bottom right corner and realized it was his room. From that moment, his account never logged on again. His last message was just 4 words: stockpile supplies, fast. It was 3 in the morning, and my roommates and I were staying up late ranking up, right at the climax of the battle. A notification popped up in the corner of the screen. It was a video call from him. I thought, I'll wait a bit, let me finish this fight first. However, the call cut off along with that voice. Immediately, he sent us another video. Leo froze for a second and took off his headphones. I also took a look at the video thumbnail. It was very dark, barely showing anything. He rarely sent things like this. As a computer science grad student, if he wasn't programming all day, he was playing games. Wait, hold on. We immediately stopped what we were doing, and Leo hit replay. When the video played, the image shook violently, as if it had been recorded in a rush and with panic in a gloomy place. Only the dim light of the TV illuminated the scene. One silhouette was on top of another. The sound of tearing echoed through the speaker, mixed with wet chewing noises. Damn it, what kind of macabre game is this? Did Arthur drop his bag of chips? Enough already. Are the graphics really that realistic? Simon said, adjusting his glasses. It must be Unreal Engine 5, but I remained glued to the screen. Feeling a chill run through my soul, the video kept shaking, but there was an instant where I clearly saw what was hanging on the wall. It was a commemorative banner from our university's cybersecurity contest. That was his room. Leo rewound the video frame by frame. There was no room for doubt. The banner, the pattern of the blanket on the sofa, and that unmistakable guitar in the corner. It was definitely the same place. The same place where we went to crash for food last month. In the final seconds, the camera turned and his face appeared on screen. Then, everything went dark. Our room fell into a silence so deathly we could hear our own breathing. Don't panic. It's probably just a joke, but the bag of chips in his hands was completely crushed. I messaged him immediately, unread. I called him, out of service. I checked his game status. His last time online was 10 minutes ago, exactly when he sent us that video. Look at the group chat. He had also sent the video to our alumni chat, but he deleted it almost instantly, leaving only that message: stockpile supplies, fast. No explanation, no further context. What the hell does this mean? Leo jumped to his feet, pacing back and forth in the narrow room. I opened the browser searching for any news. There was nothing. On social media, everything continued with its usual calm. People were chatting about final exams and summer plans, but Simon noticed something strange. Guys, look at this. He opened a tech forum. There were a few scattered posts. Does anyone know what happened in Dorm A? My cousin hasn't answered since last night. At University B, there's a student missing. The school has censored everything. Those posts didn't last long. Soon they showed a 404 error. The cyber cleanup mechanism has begun. Leo muttered, frowning. Someone is deleting specific information. Leo and I locked eyes. If we had the naive hope before that it was a game, we couldn't fool ourselves anymore. We should gather supplies. Gather what? Simon let out a mocking laugh. Are you guys seriously buying this? It's probably just a horror short film he recorded, but his laugh sounded painfully forced. Simon went silent for a moment. Why? Why would Arthur only send this to the 4 of us? We looked at each other, full of confusion. We got along with him, but we weren't close enough for such a personal message, unless he felt that only we would believe him. Leo read my thoughts. Because we were all video game addicts. We had seen countless zombie movies and played 1,000 survival games. If the end of the world really came, we would be the first to react. Whether it's true or false, let's prepare just in case. Prepare what? Simon was still struggling to process it. If the situation wasn't sinking in yet, focus on the essentials. I opened my notes app. Food, water, medicine, tools, and a location. We need a safe shelter. The observatory. The university observatory was on the roof of the classroom building, and normally, no one ever went there. The president of the astronomy club had the key, and the president happened to have gone back to his hometown last week. The spare key was in the security booth, but the guard always fell asleep. Focus on the situation. Watch the situation as night falls. Let's split up. Frank and Simon, go to the cafeteria. Buy food. Leo, you handle finding information. Find out if there's anything else out of the ordinary. And I'll go for the key. Wait, I stopped them for a second. If all this is real, are we just going to believe it blindly? And if it's a misunderstanding? Leo looked at me with overwhelming seriousness. It's better to be safe than sorry, even if it's a prank. If it's a prank, we just spent some money. He didn't finish the sentence, but we all understood. If it was real, this could be our only chance to survive. It was 3:52 a.m. With more than 2 hours until dawn, the dormitory was still lost in a deep sleep. No one suspected that 4 crazy gamers were preparing for the imminent apocalypse. 15 minutes later, we would meet at the observatory, carrying only essential, long-lasting items. Remember, don't alert anyone else. We nodded without saying a word. But deep in my heart, I prayed silently. I begged for this to be just a sick joke. I hoped that when the sun rose, everything would return to normal. However, that video kept repeating. The smashed guitar and the pure terror in our older friends' eyes wouldn't leave my mind. I pushed the room door open. The hallway light flickered as if the power was failing. A strange scent floated in the air, an indescribable aroma, maybe someone's old takeout. And so, at 3:30 in the morning, while everyone slept soundly, we began our first collection plan. For 03 a.m., the metal shutter of the cafeteria At the south gate was halfway open. The owner was dozing, slumped over the cash register. The fluorescent light buzzed and flickered incessantly. "Boss." I nudged him gently, and he woke up. With a start, a string of drool ran down the corner of his lips. "What are you taking?" "Beef jerky. Emergency rations? Give us everything you have with a long expiration date." "Going camping at this hour?" "It's for military training." I lied. The instructor called an emergency. Pure nonsense, but the owner didn't care. Yawning nonstop, he pointed to the shelves. "Take it yourselves. Pay with the QR code." I pushed the cart, moving fast through the aisles. The chocolate had to be high in cocoa to stave off hunger, and the beef jerky had to be vacuum sealed to last. The rations, though dry, satisfied like a full meal with just one bite. Salt. Salt is essential. He was right. Salt doesn't just add flavor. It also disinfects and preserves food. I grabbed 10 bags of salt and tossed them into the cart. Lighters. I remembered the logic. In video games, fire is the key to survival. 3 boxes of lighters, 5 flashlights, and batteries too. Like a compulsive obsession, I emptied the bottom shelf. There was inventory the owner had forgotten, old deals with expiration dates over a year away. "You're taking all that?" The owner finally perked up, eyeing the overflowing cart with suspicion. 4 groups are marching together. I lied on the spot. "It's our turn to buy the supplies." I pulled out my phone to scan the code. $3,247. My entire budget for 2 months. But this was no time to be cheap. "Wait a second." The owner stopped us suddenly. "Is something going on lately?" "Yesterday someone else came and bought a ton of stuff." My heart skipped a beat. "Who was it?" "I don't know him. He had an accent, took lots of cans, said he was prepping for a long trip." Canned food, one of the longest lasting items. Apparently, we weren't the only ones warned. "Boss, do you have a first aid kit?" "Yes, in the back warehouse." The man stood up. "To lead us." "What do you need that for?" "To prevent heat stroke." The smell in the warehouse was even more pungent. That strange stench reminded me of something pure rotting. The owner frowned. "Damn rats. Which corner did they go off to die in this time?" The medical kit was covered in dust. I checked it. It had basic meds, bandages, and iodine, medical gauze, and even a couple of boxes of cold medicine that had already expired. They were 6 months past the date, but it wouldn't be a big problem. "I'll take these too." I pointed to a tactical shovel in the corner. "And that one there. I needed something for defense." The owner seemed hesitant to sell it. 200, I offered directly. "Deal." As we pushed the cart back, Lawrence asked in a low voice, "Do you really believe it?" "Not you." He stayed quiet for a moment. "In the dorm next door, they're still playing games, and outside people are still eating barbecue. If something were really happening, it wouldn't be this peaceful." "The North Zone is 20 kilometers away," I reminded him. "News takes time to spread, but there's nothing on the internet." "That's exactly why it's so terrifying." We took everything to the observatory. Old Man Dave was there, waving a bunch of keys triumphantly. "Did you find anything?" I asked Leo. He shook his head. Social media in the North Zone stopped updating at 2 o'clock in the morning. The last post was someone complaining about a blackout, a power outage, something very common, but at the same time, terribly unusual. The cafeteria warehouse. Dave looked at his watch. "The back door. Last time I helped the janitor repair the lock, I learned how to open it." The back door was in a narrow alley, always crowded with barrels of leftovers, giving off a nauseating smell. But tonight there was an eerie stillness. You couldn't even hear the stray cats rummaging through the trash. The padlock was very old. I forced it a few times with my Swiss Army knife, and it gave way immediately. The warehouse was overflowing with rice, noodles, spices, and a huge freezer. "Taking the rice isn't realistic," Leo analyzed. "It weighs too much. We'd attract too much attention." "Dehydrated vegetables." Leo pointed to a corner. "The ones they use here for soup expire in 2 years." "Excellent idea." We stuffed 10 bags of vegetables into our sack and added soy sauce, vinegar, and oil. We poured the oil into empty, clean soda bottles. The freezer was full of meat. I hesitated for a second, but decided to wrap several cuts in multiple layers of plastic to bury them under the sand on the roof. "It will keep them in good condition for a while." Leo suddenly froze and pointed behind Dave. "What is that?" We turned abruptly. In the dense darkness of the warehouse, something was moving very slowly, in a strangely rigid way. It looked like a rat. Leo let out a sigh of relief. "It's just a sewer rat." Indeed, a fat, chubby rodent emerged from the shadows. But it moved very strangely. It would take 2 steps, and then spasm, foaming at the mouth. "It's poisoned," Lawrence deduced. Suddenly, the rat accelerated, lunging straight at us. Its eyes were bloodshot, showing its sharp fangs. Out of pure instinct, I acted. I raised the tactical shovel and brought it down with all my strength. Whack! The rat was crushed against the floor, splashing black blood everywhere. An unbearable stench flooded us. It was sick. "Could it be rabies?" I replied, though in my heart I feared something much worse. If even the rats were infected, then hurry up and clean. It's almost dawn. We picked up the pace. Pressure cookers, steel trays, and several airtight bags with zippers. As we passed by the fire cabinet, Lawrence smashed the glass and took a CO2 extinguisher. "This will serve as a weapon." On the 3rd floor of the lab building, in the chemistry lab, the door was locked, but the window was still open. Lawrence smiled smugly. He slipped through the window and passed us several bottles of alcohol, 75% medical grade. "Medical grade, be careful." I took the bottles. "This stuff is extremely flammable." In the 1st floor infirmary, the doctor on duty was gone, maybe to the bathroom. We quickly looted the medicine cabinet. Fever reducers, anti-inflammatories, gauze, iodine, all basic meds. But in a crisis, they could save our lives. The thermometers reminded me of Sarah. And the masks, of course. If this was a virus spreading, we needed them. Masks would be our first line of defense. We cleared out every single one in the infirmary. We gathered 5 large boxes in total. Returning to the observatory, the eastern horizon was brightening. We were exhausted, lying flat on the floor and panting like dogs. We need something else. Chloe asked. Water, I said. A massive amount of water. But the dorms have water dispensers, Olivia chimed in. Sarah shook her head. That won't be enough. If they cut the power and water, those dispensers are just decorations. Bottled water, I thought. There's still some in the cafeteria. Let's get a few more cases. I'll go, Olivia offered. Wait. Chloe stopped her. Go together and take your weapons. Our weapons were the shovel and a curtain rod we had just ripped out. Rudimentary tools, but better than nothing. Olivia and I went back to the cafeteria. The owner was wide awake, buried in his phone. We're here for more water, I announced. Take it yourselves, he replied distractedly, eyes glued to the screen. I caught a glimpse of it. It was the local news page. The headline seemed normal enough. Notice of temporary power outage in the North Zone. But the comment section was disabled. Boss, can we borrow the cart for a second? It's in the back. We pushed 10 cases of water all the way back. On the way, we ran into a few early bird students doing their morning jog. Everything seemed absolutely normal, to be honest. Olivia spoke up suddenly. If this is all a lie, then just take it as a drill. I was serious. She stopped dead in her tracks. Don't you think we're overreacting? I stopped too, and looked at the sky as it slowly brightened. Olivia, remember what kind of person our older friend is? He's very reliable. Would a man like that really use this to play a simple prank on us? She fell silent as we returned to the observatory. Sarah was modifying the exhaust fan into a simple ventilation and air filtration system to prevent airborne viruses. Where did you learn to do that? I asked. From a video, she said, adjusting her glasses. A post-apocalyptic survival guide. It had 3 million views. Chloe was sorting the supplies, putting the food on one side, tools on another, and medicine in its own space. Seeing that messy pile of provisions, a strange sense of unreality washed over me. Leo still hadn't returned. Chloe looked at the clock on her phone. Where else would he have gone at this hour? Leo, that's what we all called him. Last night we agreed to stay up all night gaming. But at midnight he snuck out, saying he was going to the internet cafe to download some files. When I called him, his phone was off. Damn it, if Leo is really out there, I'll go look for him. I jumped up. You can't, Chloe said, pulling my arm. It's too dangerous. I'll just take a look at the internet cafe, I insisted. It's already dawn. What's the worst that could happen? In the end, Chloe gave in. Put this on. It was a military coat we had grabbed along the way. Even though it was midsummer, thick clothing could prevent any skin contact. It seemed a bit excessive to me, but I put it on anyway. 10 minutes, Chloe warned me. She spoke in a stern tone. If you're not back in 10 minutes, we're leaving. Understood. I pushed open the observatory door. The hallway was in total silence. Only my own steps could be heard. The elevator was still working. Everything seemed normal, but I knew that before the storm, a terrifying calm always reigns. And we, probably, were the first to feel which way the wind was blowing. 6:23 a.m., the internet cafe across from the school. The lights were still on. The air was thick with the smell of cigarette smoke and instant noodles. I opened the door, and the familiar clatter of keyboards flooded my ears. I walked through the rows of computers. Most people were playing video games. The screen light reflected off their faces, their expressions as listless as if they were in another universe. Sure enough, Leo was sitting at station 23, wearing headphones. His eyes were bloodshot and his fingers were still moving. His typing was fast. The screen was full of code and data. Leo, I touched his shoulder. He jumped and took off his headphones. Alex, why did you come all the way here? You're really asking that? I lowered my voice. Something happened. Let's go now. Wait. He looked back at the screen. The download is almost done. I leaned in to look. It was a chaos of documents, medical manuals, wilderness survival guides, how to make homemade weapons, and even tutorials for hacking the 3G network. Leo noticed my gaze. If the 4G towers collapse, the 3G network, it might still work. Typical of a tech genius, always one step ahead. And look at this, he said, opening another folder. All the national and international info on Beijing, Twitter, Facebook, even the dark web. What did you find? His expression turned grim. Since 11 last night, in this area, they blocked all information, but he clicked on a screenshot, a tweet posted at 1 in the morning. Run, everyone has gone crazy. The attached photo was very blurry, as if taken while running away. And this, another screenshot, an anonymous post on a forum. Outbreak of a strange disease at the Beijing hospital. Patients are becoming extremely aggressive. God help us. A chill ran down my spine. Why isn't there news in the official media? What do you think? Leo smiled bitterly. Panic spreads faster than the virus. The download bar finally reached 100%. Leo quickly unplugged the USB and put in an industrial wireless network card. It has a 2-kilometer range. You already had this ready. I'm also in our friends group. He adjusted his glasses. He's gone. When I saw his message, I knew something was wrong. We walked quickly out of the internet cafe. It was already dawn. The food carts were already selling. The aroma was delicious. Everything seemed so normal. Leo suddenly pulled me. Look, at the school's main entrance, there are several patrol cars. Police were talking to the security guards with very tense faces. Let's go through the back entrance. I pulled him to take a detour. The back entrance never opens, but the fence is very long. No problem. The back entrance has a gap that all the students know. As soon as we slipped through, we heard the loudspeakers behind us. Attention, students. Due to equipment maintenance, the school will proceed this morning with a power cut. We jogged without stopping to the observatory. Seeing us, Ryan sighed in relief. You're finally here. How are things outside? Not good. I told them everything we had seen. Sarah was still in denial. A blackout, it's just that. In summer the power always goes out. A summer blackout doesn't attract that many police, Leo corrected her. Ryan looked at his cell phone. It's 7:40, 20 minutes left. 20 minutes for what? For the blackout. He stood up. If they really cut the power, we have to hurry. In the next 20 minutes, we seemed possessed. We charged every possible device and filled every container within reach with water. And we checked the supplies one more time. Leo spoke suddenly. It will be very cold at night. Where do we get blankets? The mats. Sarah hit her forehead. There are some in the sports room. He and Ryan ran to get them. Leo and I stayed behind to continue organizing the provisions. The observatory wasn't large, but it was enough for the four of us. We covered the windows with newspaper, leaving just a slit to look outside. At 7:55, Ryan and Leo returned with the mats and a bunch of other things. Jump ropes to use as cord, weights as weapons, and a couple of balls we didn't know what to do with. In the last 5 minutes, I looked at my phone. We sat on the floor in a circle, no one saying a word. The atmosphere was as heavy as the sea before a storm. If it really is the end of the world, what do you regret most? Not having ever fallen in love, Sarah answered first. Not finishing my life goals. Not finishing my video game. I said, not going home. Leo let out a laugh. I regret not finishing my instant soup last night. Everyone laughed. It was a brief laugh, but it dissipated the fear a bit. At 8 o'clock sharp, the lights went out. Not just the observatory. The entire classroom building went dark. Outside the window, we heard the complaints of the students. Some were cursing the school, but we knew this wasn't just any blackout. The radio. Sarah turned on the radio she had prepared and tuned into the emergency channel. Through the static, the announcer's voice was vaguely heard. Oh, words from a standard official statement, but that just proved how serious the situation was. I approached the window and carefully lifted a corner of the newspaper. The students below were starting to gather, whispering among themselves. Someone was talking on the phone. Their expression went from doubt to absolute terror. There's still a signal. Ryan checked his phone, but it's very unstable. The towers are overloaded, Sarah analyzed. Everyone is online looking for news. I updated my social media. The screen took time to load, but I managed to see some posts. Everyone was asking about the blackout, nothing more. Suddenly, a sharp scream tore through the silence. It sounded far away but very clear, a shriek of pure terror. We looked into each other's eyes. Then, another scream, this time, much closer. At 6:03 in the morning, a piercing scream broke the calm of dawn. The moment Ryan stood up, I snapped my eyes open, my heart beating 1,000 miles an hour. The others in the observatory also woke up startled. Ryan's hands were still trembling, and his face was as pale as paper. His voice was barely a whisper. The second scream echoed, closer this time, seemingly from the dorms. Chaotic footsteps followed, the sound of things falling. He approached the door, and Ryan stood up. There were even growls like wild beasts. We got up quickly, everyone to their post. Leo, check the doors. Sarah, come with me to the roof. Upstairs, the first rays of the sun were just appearing. At this hour, the early rising students would be out running on the track, and the cafeteria would smell like fresh soy milk. But today, the entire campus was plunged into a disturbing silence. No, it wasn't. Silence. Leo pointed toward the dormitories, and Ryan stood up. The crash of breaking glass wouldn't stop. People were screaming for help and pounding desperately against the doors in the dormitory building. In Building 5, third floor, someone leaned halfway out the window screaming for help. Immediately, something dragged him back inside. Damn it, I cursed, unable to contain myself. There were more of them every second. Windows were lit up with moving shadows, but in seconds, the lights went out one by one. Don't look anymore, I told myself. Stop looking. Sarah pulled me down. We have to go see how Marcus is doing. And what happened to him? Then I remembered. Last night Marcus went to the lab to calibrate some equipment and hadn't returned. His phone was off, and his last location was the science building. We looked out the window toward the science building. It wasn't far, less than 200 meters in a straight line, but right now, those 200 meters could be the line between life and death. I'll go find him. I grabbed the things I needed most. My gear, a thick jacket, cargo pants, and sneakers. The protective equipment Leo brought from the gym also helped. Knee pads, elbow pads, and a motorcycle helmet. I'm going with you. Ryan stood up. No, Leo stopped him. A large group is an easy target. Alex is more agile. Alone, he can move better. I knew he was right, but it was hard for Ryan to accept it. 15 minutes. Ryan stared at me. In 15 minutes you have to be back, whether you find him in the building or not. I felt the weight of the building on me. I didn't know if I'd make it. Got it. I tucked my Swiss Army knife into my waistband, grabbed pepper spray, and took a deep breath. I pushed the door open. The hallway was terrifyingly silent. The green emergency light gave everything a ghostly tint. I walked pressed against the wall, guarding every step. In the stairwell, something echoed. An echo. It was my own breathing. First floor, second floor, third floor. Everything looked normal. So normal it was unsettling. As I pushed open the building's fire door, The smell hit me full force, but beneath that scent, something else drifted in, the metallic stench of blood. At the end of the hall, the lab door was ajar. On the floor were dark stains, trailing inward. "Marcus," I called in a low voice. No answer. When I opened the door, the lab was a disaster. Overturned equipment and smashed models covered the floor. Marcus's backpack was still on the table, next to the device he was halfway through assembling. Where did he go? Suddenly, a noise came from the storage room. I gripped the handle of my knife and approached slowly. A faint light peeked through the crack, accompanied by heavy breathing. "It's me, Alex. Let me in quickly." It was Marcus's voice. I pushed the door and entered. He was curled in a corner. His face was pale, and his left arm was bleeding, wrapped in a makeshift bandage. "What happened? Where is Professor Miller?" Trembling, he replied, "Last night Professor Miller stayed late to work. I thought everything was fine, but he mutated. He's not the same anymore." Marcus's voice broke into a sob. He lunged at me to bite me. His eyes were completely blank. "The infected, they're here." The scenes from the videos had become reality. "Can you walk?" I asked. I helped him up. He stumbled, but stabilized, his mind going blank for a second. "Wait," he resisted, turning to grab the half-finished device from the table. "I have to take this." What could be so important? A signal interceptor. Marcus panted heavily. "It can pick up any wireless signal, even military frequencies." Without a word, I slung his backpack over my shoulder just as sounds came from the hall. The sound of footsteps. No, not steps. A dragging sound, as if someone were shuffling while walking, accompanied by heavy breathing. Marcus and I locked eyes. The storage room only had one exit. The scraping sound drew closer. Through the crack, I saw a shadow loom at the lab door. His white coat was covered in blood, his hair a mess, and his gait was bizarre. Stumbling, it was Professor Miller. Professor Miller, or rather, what used to be him, prowled through the lab, knocking over even more equipment. Suddenly, he stopped and sniffed the air, searching for something. Then, he slowly turned his head toward the storage room. "Weapons," I whispered. Marcus pointed to a shelf with chemical bottles. "Sulfuric acid," he murmured. I lowered the bottle with extreme care. In my other hand, I gripped my knife. The knob began to turn. 1 second, 2 seconds. The door burst open. Professor Miller lunged inside, emitting mindless grunts. I could see his face clearly now. His skin was a sickly gray, his eyes bloodshot, and unrecognizable fluid stained the corners of his mouth. I threw the acid directly into his face. SSSHHH. A nauseating smell immediately filled the small space. Professor Miller let out a blood-curdling shriek and recoiled, covering his face. "Run." I pulled Marcus, and we bolted out of the storage room. Professor Miller writhed on the floor, but he didn't stay down for long. Despite his face being disfigured by the corrosion, he stumbled after us. This way, we ducked into the stairwell. Marcus's legs gave out, almost forcing me to drag him down the stairs. The growls behind us were getting closer as he broke away. The main exit was right in front of us, but outside, more shadows appeared. 3 people, no, 5, were wandering the plaza in front of the entrance. Their movements were rigid but not slow. One wore a guard's uniform. The radio on his hip was still emitting static. The window. Marcus pointed toward a side window on the first floor. It wasn't very high. I boosted him up, and he managed to climb through with effort. Just as I was about to follow, the window frame shook. The stairwell door slammed open. Professor Miller had reached us. He was too close. I grabbed a chair and hurled it at him with all my strength. Taking advantage of his stumble, I jumped through the window. The infected outside heard us and began to close in. "Over here." It was Ryan's voice. He and Leo appeared a short distance away, carrying something in their hands. "Catch it." A Molotov cocktail flew in an arc through the air. The glass bottle shattered at the feet of the infected, and the flames erupted. The monsters scattered in an instant. It seemed those creatures still possessed an instinct to fear fire, backing away. Instinctively, we sprinted toward the observatory. Those 200 meters never felt so endless. I could hear them on our heels and feel the danger breathing down my neck. Marcus's wound was slowing us down. I was practically dragging him. 100 meters, 50 meters, fast. Ryan and Leo were waiting at the entrance to cover us. We burst inside and they slammed the door shut immediately, sliding the bolt. Thump, thump, thump. The infected crashed against the door, making it vibrate, but it held. We collapsed on the floor, breathless. I looked at the Molotov cocktail Ryan was still holding. "We made them last night," he said, wiping sweat. "Alcohol and dish soap. Something quick." We had to tend to Marcus's wound. We helped him to the prep room and used iodine to disinfect the injury. Luckily, it wasn't very deep. It looked more like a scratch than a bite. "The transmission route of the virus," Marcus muttered. "If it really is a virus spread by fluids." "Stop talking," I said. I bandaged him carefully. "Rest for a while." Outside the window, the screams of agony wouldn't stop. The entire school campus had descended into absolute chaos. "Look over there." Ryan pointed into the distance. Thick black smoke was rising from the dormitories. Someone had started a fire, or it had spun out of control. More and more shadows wandered between the buildings. Some still wore their pajamas, newly infected, surely. "Our decision was the right one," Ryan said in a low voice. "If we had stayed in the dorm, I don't even want to imagine it." Our phones still had a signal, but the internet was failing. In the family group chat, my parents were sending messages nonstop. "I'm okay. I'm in a safe place," I typed. "I'm at the dormitory. For now, please don't leave the house." As soon as I sent the message, the signal cut out completely. The communications were starting to collapse. Marcus, lying on the improvised bed, sighed. "Next goes the electricity, and then, he didn't finish the sentence, but we all understood. Social order was crumbling to pieces, and this was only the beginning. The real end of the world had found us. By the third day, we had established a fragile balance. The astronomy classroom became our sanctuary. Marcus set a strict schedule. During the day, 2 stood guard while 2 rested. At night, we were all on high alert. Food was rationed and water was saved drop by drop. Silence was our top priority. They were incredibly sensitive to noise. We learned that lesson the hard way. Yesterday, someone in the building opposite us screamed for help. It attracted dozens of infected instantly. That building fell completely. Marcus's wound was healing well, but he seemed distant. He spent most of his time focused on his gadgets. He had finished adjusting the signal interceptor. All kinds of information began to arrive in bursts. The zone has fallen. We request reinforcements. The number of infected exceeds projections. Initiating evacuation protocol. Meeting point. Those fragmented conversations revealed the harsh truth of the outside world. It wasn't just our school. The entire city was collapsing. Our sector was being abandoned. A serum, Marcus suddenly exclaimed. I just intercepted a message. An encrypted message mentioned a serum. Where are the trials? At the Disease Control Center. They say the first trials have worked. A spark of hope ignited in the middle of our despair. But the center was on the other side of the city. As things stood, getting there was a fantasy. First, let's make sure we survive, Marcus said, always the rational one. However, on the morning of the 5th day, everything changed. I woke up to take my shift as usual, but I found Marcus huddled in a corner. He was shaking uncontrollably. Marcus looked up at me with empty eyes. I don't feel very well, he said. My heart sank into my chest. Since when? Last night. Maybe even before that. We checked his body. There were no obvious bites or scratches, but then, on his calf, there was a swelling identical to a mosquito bite. A mosquito. Leo's face changed. The room fell into a deathly silence. All of us. We realized something. The virus wasn't just spread by bites. Mosquitoes and insects, present everywhere, were also carriers. Isolate me, Marcus's voice said. He sounded extremely weak, but firm. Lock me in the storeroom. No, Leo shouted. What is this? It's the only way. Marcus stood up, staggering. I could feel it. That thing was burning like an uncontrollable fire inside his body. We had no other choice. We turned the storeroom into a temporary isolation zone. We left food and water at the door. Marcus went in on his own and locked it. He spoke his last words. Use chains, use whatever you find to secure the lock. In that moment, my hands were shaking. The next 12 hours were absolute torture. We could hear it. Moans, thuds, and growls that no longer sounded human coming from inside. Leo tried to open the door several times, but we stopped him. He didn't want to become that monster, I told him. With bloodshot eyes, I said, it was his choice. Suddenly, I remembered Leo used to handle the night patrols on the roof, that roof full of weeds. It was all my fault. I punched the wall hard. If only I had cleared that grass sooner, but it was already too late for regrets. Sophie, Leo stammered. Let's go find Sophie. We still have a chance. Ryan and I exchanged looks. Going to the disease control center meant crossing a fallen city. After all, what were our real chances of surviving? Looking at the sealed storeroom door, we knew there was no turning back. That same night, we began preparing. According to the map, the shortest route to the disease control center was 15 kilometers. On foot, accounting for time to evade the infected, it would take at least 2 days. For protection, we used adhesive tape to seal every opening in our clothes, especially at the cuffs and ankles. As for weapons, besides knives, we prepared some Molotov cocktails, and a way to communicate. Marcus adjusted the radio to a private channel. That frequency was still clear. Worked. We reduced food and water to the minimum, just enough for 3 days. Before leaving, I want to see Marcus. He lunged toward us, growling in a state of semi-unconsciousness. Wait for me, I whispered. At 4 a.m, we prepared to leave. As we pushed open the door of the astronomy building, we were greeted by a completely unknown world. The school we knew so well had been transformed into a hellscape. There was broken glass everywhere, discarded bicycles, and things I preferred not to look at closely. In the distance, firelight flickered, and nearby, wandering shadows roamed. Remember, I said to Leo, I wasn't wrong, but seeing the chaos, we had to see where to go. Look, it's all exposed. The situation was desperate, with no solution in sight for this nightmare. With our packs on, we began our transformation into survivors. Moving as a pack, focused and incompressible, we were ready to face the immense unknown ahead. While I covered the rear, the school's south gate was our target. It was the closest exit, but also the most dangerous, usually the most crowded spot. Listen, Leo said, suddenly crouching. In the small plaza ahead, there were more than 10 infected under the moonlight. Their twisted bodies and unnatural movements were clear. Some still wore their uniforms. They were clearly students infected just yesterday. Let's take a detour, Ryan decided, pulling us back. We had no choice but to retreat. Choosing a longer but relatively safer route, we crossed through the classroom building. We went around the library and avoided the cafeteria. Every familiar corner was now completely warped. The library windows were shattered across the floor, and the interior was pitch black. As we passed, I thought I saw something moving between the shelves. Don't look, keep walking. Finally, we reached the perimeter wall. There was an old side gate that was always locked, but Ryan had studied the structure of that lock a long time ago. Give me 3 minutes. He took out his tools and began to pick it. I turned my back. keeping my eyes fixed on the path behind us. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Click. Done. The door opened, revealing the true world of the city. If the campus still held some remnants of order, outside was absolute chaos. In the streets, cars were parked in total disarray. Some had their doors wide open, others had crashed into each other. Streetlights flickered incessantly, while others had gone out completely. In the air, thick smoke and a foul stench of rot floated. Put on your masks. At least they'll filter some of it. We moved along the planned route. The commercial district that used to be so bustling now looked like a ghost town. Most of the metal shutters on the shops had been forced open, revealing a disaster inside. Someone's already been here, Leo said, pointing at the tracks on the ground. Not long ago, there were survivors. This filled us with joy, but also put us on high alert. After advancing about 2 kilometers, the sky began to brighten. At that moment, we were forced to find a place to rest. Moving by day was far too risky. The infected's vision seemed to sharpen with the light. There, I pointed out to Caesar, we had to find a spot. I gestured toward an office on the 3rd floor of the commercial building. That became our temporary refuge. The lock was still solid and the windows were intact. We took turns resting while simultaneously monitoring the situation on the street. The view in broad daylight was even more terrifying. There were many more infected than we imagined, wandering aimlessly. Sometimes they gathered in packs and then dispersed. A few still kept the habits they had in life. I saw an infected man in a suit standing, waiting for the bus to arrive, even though the bus stop sign had collapsed long ago. Look over there, Leo said, passing me the binoculars. A few blocks away, a small group of people was moving quickly. They were well equipped and moved with order. They were clearly organized. Government people? I asked. Doesn't look like it. Leo shook his head. Their gear is very irregular. Apparently, we aren't the only group of survivors. While I thought about the infected, at noon, the radio suddenly buzzed. Is anyone there? This is. Please, respond. The signal was very weak and broken. Should we answer? Leo looked at me. I hesitated for a moment. Revealing our position now carried an enormous risk, but being cautious, I pressed the communicator button firmly. Who is this? Survivors? We're trapped in the art museum. We need help. The art museum wasn't in our area, and we couldn't go there. It was too far and not on our route. How many are you? 2, a couple and a child. At the mention of the child, the voice broke noticeably. I turned off the radio and looked at Leo and Caesar. We aren't going, Leo said flatly. We have our own mission. He was right, but the despair in that voice. Caesar also nodded in agreement. Let's move on, I finally said. At 4 in the afternoon, we resumed our mission. In the part of the city where we were, we bypassed 2 areas packed with infected while crossing a residential zone. We were moving slower than planned. At this rate, it would take 3 days to reach the CDC. Could the base hold out that long? 2 days had already passed, and we had barely covered 5 kilometers. The burning sun melted the asphalt until it softened. Our shoe soles left shallow marks with every step. The heat was so suffocating that even my toes cramped up. I stared at my shadow for a moment. Just a couple of seconds. Before, every summer afternoon after school let out, my shadow would stretch out the same way. Only then, I was surrounded by a crowd of noisy, happy classmates. Now, the only thing left was the echo of Leo and Caesar's footsteps clicking on the desolate street. In the distance, zombies surrounded me in the shadows of the buildings. I didn't dare look at them too long, but I couldn't help spying on them out of the corner of my eye. Their rotting skin glistened under the sun, giving them the appearance of cured meat that had gone bad. Their movements were half as slow as usual, but like wind-up puppets, they advanced tirelessly. It was strange that, being in such a state of decay, their joints could still flex and keep them walking. How much further? Leo asked, his voice so hoarse it scraped like sandpaper on wood. I turned my head to see the bandage on his left arm. A dark bloodstain had spread to cover half of it. That was the wound the old man gave him during that treacherous attack. In my mind, I briefly relived last night's scene at the convenience store. That old man hunched behind the shelves, coughing with such violence that his back looked like a dried shrimp. When we offered him half a bottle of water, his fingers trembled like dry leaves in an autumn wind. But who could have imagined that the moment Leo placed the ration in front of him, he would suddenly grab a broken beer bottle and lunge into an attack? The sound of glass tearing skin was faint, like ripping plastic wrap, but that cruelty was a great misfortune. The cruelty didn't seem like an attempt to steal food at all, but rather the simple desire to drag someone else to the grave with him. We're almost there, I said. To the overpass. I tried to make my voice sound firm. My gaze passed over Leo's shoulder and stopped on Caesar. He was staring, absorbed, at an overturned ice cream cart on the side of the street. The melted ice cream mixed with dark mud at the front, looking like a puddle of hardened vomit. Just then, from the alleyway, there was an explosion of accelerated growls. It wasn't 1 or 2, but an entire pack. A chill made my skin crawl instantly. Out of the corner of my eye, I managed to make out dark figures pouring out in mass around the curve. Their limbs contorted at grotesque angles, and wheezing noises erupted from their throats. Like broken bellows. Run! I screamed at the top of my lungs, pulling hard on Leo's arm. As we lunged forward, he stumbled slightly. I was sure his wound had reopened and hurt horribly, but I didn't dare stop. The growls behind our backs were getting closer and closer. I could hear the heavy footsteps of Caesar following us very closely. He always had the habit of stepping with great force when running, as if he feared others wouldn't notice he was coming. I don't know how long We ran. It was only when my chest burned as if filled with fire that we swerved into a narrow alley to hide. I leaned against the cold wall, gasping for breath. And in that moment I realized, with horror, that only Leo was by my side. Caesar had disappeared. A gust of wind from the alley entrance hit us head-on, bringing that nauseating smell with it. I froze, staring fixedly at the end of that empty passage. I felt as if an invisible hand were squeezing my heart. How was it possible that he hadn't caught up to us? When I turned a moment ago, I had seen him clearly right behind us. Had he tripped? Or maybe. I didn't dare think about the moment he was left behind. But I didn't dare keep thinking about it. Leo leaned against the wall and coughed violently. Each jolt sounded as if he were going to expel his lungs. Suddenly, I remembered the day we locked Arthur in the warehouse. He also coughed in such a fierce way. The teller area of an abandoned bank had become our temporary refuge. We sealed the metal door from the inside. I pulled out my dagger and cut Leo's bandages. The edges of the wound had turned a deep black. We could no longer heal it. He panted and laughed at the same time, a laugh flooded with despair. Leave me, go find Sophie, or shut up. I slapped him. The sharp crack echoed in the narrow space, reverberating until my ears ached. In reality, as soon as I hit him, I regretted it immediately. He was already in unbearable pain, but I couldn't control myself. If I let him keep talking, I feared I would also end up breaking down. I felt like I was about to collapse too. We had made it through so much. I looked him firmly in the eyes, trying to put some steel in my voice. We're only halfway there. Do you plan to just lie there waiting for death? I pointed at his wound, unable to stop my fingers from trembling. Even if you turn, if we find the serum, we can still cure you. He was stunned. A faint spark slowly ignited in his gaze, identical to a candle about to go out that flares up again in the wind. I tore the hem of my shirt to bandage him again. However, when I brushed against his skin, I could feel the scorching heat underneath. My heart sank to the very bottom of my chest. He had a fever that was even more lethal than his wound turning dark. We didn't have even a single pill to lower his fever. After bandaging him, I leaned against the cold ATM, staring blankly at the flickering light. I stayed there, paralyzed. In the past, I always complained about how endless the summer seemed to me. But now, I wish the sun would never set. Darkness fell too fast, and those damn creatures would wake up again. Leo leaned back against the wall and closed his eyes tightly. His breathing was still extremely labored. I felt for the half piece of candle in my pocket. I had grabbed it from the convenience store, planning to save it for the night. But suddenly, I felt we should use the daylight to push forward a bit more, even if it was only 100 meters. If we moved 100 meters, the distance to safety would shrink by 100 meters, and we'd be closer to the AOER. I gripped my dagger tightly, the handle slippery with sweat. Let's go. We can't stop, I said. Because if we did, it would truly be the end. The further north we went, the more zombies there were. With no other choice, we had to find a place to hide temporarily. I helped Leo crawl inside, the soles of our shoes crunching over scraps of paper scattered on the floor, making a sharp sound. In normal times, no one would have noticed that noise, but now it sounded like someone was scraping our eardrums with sandpaper. Every noise we made terrified me, fearing we'd wake one of those things. Is anyone here? I whispered, my voice low. The echo bouncing off the wide lobby felt incredibly abrupt. Suddenly, there was movement behind the reception desk. A figure was shaking violently. It was a girl, hidden under the counter, huddled and hugging her knees, exposing half of her calves stained with dried mud. Her fingers twisted the hem of her cream-white blouse. The fabric looked expensive. Her employee badge pinned to her chest swayed gently. The plastic sleeve showed the name, Wren, administrative assistant. The girl in the photo had her hair in a low ponytail, and when she smiled, a small dimple appeared near her lips. Stop calling out, she said with a trembling voice. Her eyes darted over us, stopping on Leo and me. Seeing his blood-soaked bandage, her pupils instinctively contracted. You're not those monsters. I didn't answer and pointed to Leo's arm. Is there a pharmacy? He has a very high fever. She pursed her lips, looking toward the glass doors. Right across, diagonally, there's a 24-hour pharmacy. But yesterday, I saw 3 of those things blocking the register. They just stood there, motionless. She paused, then stepped aside, revealing the emergency exit sign right behind her. If you take the fire escape and cross the back alley, you can go around through the pharmacy's back door. The lock on that door has been rusted for a long time. One kick will open it. I stared at her for about 2 seconds. This building had been besieged for at least 3 days. The fact that she had managed to survive until now, if it wasn't pure luck, then it was because she was much cleverer than she looked. Why don't you? I'm waiting for news. She lowered her head, gently rubbing her badge with her finger, touching the dimple in her photo. The boss said that he would send a car for us. Her voice slowly faded away, until finally, it vanished into a sigh as light as a silk thread. In that moment, I didn't know whether to call her a lucky soul protected by heaven or just a fool with incredible luck. In this situation, she still believed her boss's promise. Stop talking, let's get out of here now. I supported Leo, and we passed by her. She fell silent for a moment, nodded, and stepped forward to show us the way. We followed her through the fire escape, the rust on the railing. The iron railing scraped my hands, leaving a rough and uncomfortable sensation. Leo's breathing was getting heavier and heavier. He was leaning almost his entire weight on my shoulders. I could feel his skin burning, as if I were pressed against a hot iron. If we didn't find medicine to break his fever before the wound worsened, the high fever would end up taking him down first. Rin walked in front, her steps very light, but she always managed to avoid the loose steps on the right during the descent. As we passed through the second-floor hallway, she stopped dead and pointed toward the window. Look, that's the apartment I rented. On the sixth floor of the building opposite, a lone light flickered. The curtains weren't fully closed, so you could still see the crooked sofa inside. The night before last, the light was still on, but yesterday, it went out completely. Her voice was barely a whisper. I don't think they managed to hold out. Look, that's the apartment I rented. On the sixth floor of the building opposite, a lone light flickered. The curtains weren't fully closed, so you could still see the interior. I said nothing. In moments like this, any word of comfort was useless. At sunset on the third day, we found ourselves in we were resting in a baby supply store. Leo had already started to become delirious. He clung tightly to a teddy bear, muttering that it was the box of serums Marcus had hidden. Rin used a thermometer from the shop to check his temperature, her hands shaking as she flicked the thermometer. 103.5 degrees. If it kept up, the fever would fry his brain. Outside, the sky darkened and the zombie snarls grew louder. I looked at the 24-hour pharmacy sign flickering across the street. The pharmacy's crimson light cast a trembling reflection on the ground. I'll distract them, I said suddenly. Rin looked up, her face pale. You're crazy. There are at least 7 of them, and we have no other way out. I interrupted her in a very soft voice. I fixed my gaze on the abandoned bicycle in the corner. Take him through the back alley. I'll lure them toward the materials market to the east. There are plenty of alleys there to lose them. Before she could reply, I put on the heavy military coat. The thick canvas brushed my neck, smelling of old camphor. We had taken it from the warehouse. It used to be a burden, but now it was our only salvation. See that red water tower? I asked, pointing to the horizon. The sunset was dying behind it. In 1 hour, wait for us there. Give whoever is missing 3 hours. As I climbed onto the bike, the rust on the seat left a deep scarlet stain, like blood, on my pants. I took a deep breath and rang the bell. That crystalline sound fell like a stone into dead waters, waking the corpses in front of the pharmacy. They moved, turning their faces slowly. I pedaled with all my soul. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Ren helping Leo into the alley. I felt an immense relief as the wind whipped into my military coat. My back was already soaked in sweat. Those creatures followed me, dragging their feet, tireless in their dark hunt. When I reached the cobblestone crossing, I braked hard. The road was completely blocked. A mountain of scrap metal and wrecked cars rose before me. A truck hung dramatically at the top, right on the edge of the abyss. A zombie in a suit was still trapped in the window, hitting the glass with a dull, hollow thud. I would have to climb. I hoisted the bicycle and started to climb. My coat got caught on a truck's mirror, nearly pulling me down. Looking down, I saw one of them climbing the tire with its rotting fingers. Clinging to the metal, dry mud packed under their nails. My heart beat 1,000 miles an hour, threatening to break my ribs as I climbed desperately. The bike dug painfully into my waist. Reaching the top, the zombie almost grazed my heels, its head peeling back, snapping its blackened teeth. Get lost, I screamed at it, letting loose. A brutal kick landed squarely on its chest. It fell like a ragdoll onto a car roof with a dull thud. Crossing the debris, glass sliced my leg, and the wind rushed in, bringing with it a sharp, stinging pain. I turned and saw half of those creatures trapped, writhing in vain, but the first one remained relentless, dragging its broken leg. It crawled on its knees at a speed that turned my blood to ice. As I approached the water tower, the night had already embraced us. The lights were burned out. Only a flickering sign in the distance stretched our shadows at will. Inside the coat, the heat was suffocating me. Sweat blurred my vision. I grit my teeth and pedaled until the chain snapped with a crack. Getting off, my legs shook as I gripped the handlebars. Amidst my gasps, I heard those dragging footsteps again. The one with the broken leg was only meters away. I ditched the bike and stumbled toward the tower. Every step felt heavy as lead. Reaching the base of the tower, I made out 2 silhouettes in the shadows. It was Ren and Leo. Ren's voice choked on a scream of pure terror. I followed her gaze and saw the crawling creature less than 5 meters from me, its rotten eyes fixed on me. Suddenly, roars echoed through all the alleys, closing in from every front. I hadn't led them away. I had cornered them right toward us. As I realized this, my vision blurred. The coat felt like it was choking me, and a buzzing drilled into my ears. I wanted to yell at Ren to escape with Leo, but my voice died in my throat. Falling, I saw Ren run desperately toward me and Leo trying to stand. Their faces faded, leaving only the zombie. It kept crawling toward me. This is the end, was my last thought before losing myself in the darkness. Opening my eyes, the intense smell of iodine flooded my senses, returning a thread of light to my clouded mind. Leo was in front of me, wrapped in clean white bandages, and though he looked pale, his gaze shone with clarity. Seeing me wake up, a flash of relief crossed his eyes. Water, I murmured, but I felt something cold and rough, and the light from Ren moved away. The pain of the rope cutting into my skin made me swallow hard. My heart sank. You're finally awake, a raspy voice growled. 3 men watched us from the corner. A man named Silas toyed with a pocket knife. I looked at the backpacks tossed at his feet. They had looted all our supplies with calculated cruelty. Silas's gaze swept over Ren as if he were evaluating livestock. A look so repulsive it turned my stomach. I wondered who these people were that wanted me dead. My mind raced. Fighting was suicide. We were easy prey. If they want the girl, let them have her. After all, she doesn't have much time left anyway. Silas arched an eyebrow. Oh, really? He spat, dripping with distrust. Look at her, I said, pointing at Ren. A zombie scratched her. She isn't bleeding, but she could be infected. Ren tensed up, and I felt a knot of panic in my throat. I was terrified they would discover our lie, but she immediately lowered her head, trembling and faking her terror too. Perfection. Leo played along with a soul-crushing cough. Silas spat out a curse and delivered a hard kick to my leg, forcing a groan out of me. Take him to the pit. He'll serve as bait. As they dragged me away, I put up a little resistance, even though my heart was pounding wildly. They wanted to use me to lure the dead, a macabre plan, but at least Ren and Leo would be safe. They threw me into a ruined warehouse. The hit of damp smell and dust was immediate. In the corner loomed a dark pit, surrounded by a few pale bones. That gave off a deathly chill in the shadows. I leaned against the wall and began to rub my bindings. The rough wall started wearing down the rope, burning and bruising my wrists. I knew those people had no mercy. They didn't plan on leaving us alive. I had to escape, or I'd become a feast for the zombies. Time was running out. My wrists burned like hell, but I didn't dare stop. Every rub brought me closer to my freedom. The strange noises from outside made my blood run cold, trembling that they might enter at any moment. At the stroke of midnight, the rope finally gave way. In that second, I felt like bursting into tears of pure relief. I moved my numb wrists and began crawling in. I moved silently toward the door. Just as I touched the frozen wood, I heard footsteps and pulled my hand back in terror. Right at that moment, the door burst open and the guard blocked my exit. The light blinded me. He hesitated for a second, but then reached for the knife at his waist. Adrenaline exploded in my veins. I felt like this was the end. I had nowhere left to hide. I clenched my fists, ready to fight until my last breath. Then a dull thud echoed and the giant collapsed, bleeding from the back of his head. I stood there frozen. Behind him, a shadow rose slowly. It was Arthur. He held a blood-stained brick, his eyes shining with panic. Let's go. I'll explain later, he whispered as we snuck back to our hiding spot. From a distance, we saw Leo and Silas hiding behind the shelves, armed with metal pipes and consumed by anxiety. When they saw us, they let out a sigh of relief. It was then that Arthur confessed his painful ordeal. After getting lost among the dead, he ran into them and faked joining their group just to survive. But as soon as he knew they planned to hurt us, he knew they would have no mercy. So he waited for the exact moment to rescue us. It moved me to the depths of my soul. True friends shine in the darkness. We couldn't stay there. Crouching low, we slipped toward the back door. The crunch of broken glass under our shoes sounded deafening in the middle of that silent night. A pale moonlight illuminated a strange bundle that Arthur had tied to his waist. While he was undercover, he had hidden some saltpeter, charcoal to make explosives. Leo murmured, "Doesn't look like it." But a metal barrel crashed down behind us with a thunderous roar, followed by the most disgusting insults. "You damn bastards, where do you think you're going?" he roared. My skin crawled. It was Silas, charging toward us with a metal pipe in his hand. "Split up," Arthur shouted at us. He shoved a heavy shelf that collapsed, spilling barrels everywhere. The narrow hallway was blocked. Silas cursed as he slammed into the obstacle, and I took the chance to pull Arthur toward the forklift. It rumbled and shook as we scrambled to get it moving. Arthur hadn't made it around the fallen shelf yet. The keys were in the ignition. I'd noticed them before. I turned the key and the engine coughed. In the distance, Silas had already rounded the fallen shelf. Wielding a knife like a madman, Arthur threw a crowbar that hit him square in the wrist. The knife fell with a loud clatter. "To hell with this," Silas bellowed and lunged forward. He threw himself at Arthur, attacking brutally with his weapon. Arthur dodged, and the pipe hit the concrete, sending sparks flying. I floored the forklift, aiming straight for the back exit. I slammed into the iron door until it buckled. Arthur pulled my arm and yelled, "To the left." I turned. 3 of the dead, drawn by the noise, were closing in on us. One wore a tattered courier uniform, growling with drool leaking from his jaw. "Hold on tight." I jerked the wheel, and we rammed into them with fury. The fork slammed into the dead courier's chest. He was thrown back, but his claws gripped the edge, scratching the metal with his rotten nails. Letting out a nightmare screech, Arthur grabbed a fire extinguisher and crushed the creature's skull. Black sludge splattered us everywhere. "Blow it," Arthur shouted, now right beside us. With his explosive in hand, he looked back. Silas and his thugs were right on our heels, dragging metal across the floor with a sound that made my hair stand on end. I looked at the zombies. They were closing in, and with the narrow alley ahead, if they cornered us, we were dead. I grit my teeth and floored it, pushing through the zombies to clear a path. Arthur lit the fuse, hurled the explosive into the warehouse with rage, and pulled us toward the alley. We had barely taken a few steps when the explosion went off. The roof blew to pieces. The heat and debris hit our backs with a searing pain. "Run!" I screamed, dragging them toward the roof. The zombies, driven mad by the noise, broke loose like demons. 2 of them blocked our path at the stairs. One had a broken leg and clawed at the cement, kicking up dust as he crawled. Arthur grabbed a pipe and jammed it into the monster's mouth the moment it raised its head. Black Blood splattered us. Stumbling, we reached the roof and slammed the metal door shut. Arthur tied it with chains, and the moment it closed, we felt the savage blows hitting us. From the other side, I led Arthur over to the rusted water tank. His forehead was burning like fire, but he gripped my wrist with all his strength. "The hinges?" he whispered. Turning, I saw the door was already starting to give way at the bottom. Grant pointed to a corner in desperation. There, steel rods. They were construction scraps, nothing but rusted, sharp pieces. Arthur jammed the longest rod into the hinge. As soon as the metal caught, the impact on the door seemed to ease slightly. "And there's more," Grant shouted, pointing to a pile of old bricks. Arthur and I started stacking them against the door in a rush. The barricade grew. The shaking stopped a little, but the growls felt closer and closer. Their rotting breath hit the metal, making everything stink of death. "Damn it, those bastards are coming too." I peeked out, and I saw Silas climbing up, along with Zach wielding a fire axe. It was clear they had managed to dodge the explosion. 2 zombies were chasing them from behind. We were cornered. "Throw something at them," I screamed, hurling a brick that hit Zach directly. He spat out a curse and turned around, swinging his axe with blind fury. Grant threw another stone at Silas's head, but it hit the railing. Arthur stayed and left. Arthur stayed and left. Leaning against the water tank and gasping for air, he pointed. "Pick up those tiles." To the north, there were some old asbestos sheets. Arthur and I locked eyes. We ripped a couple of them off with fury and threw them down the stairs. The sheets fell with a loud crash onto Silas. A nail tore his arm open and blood began to gush out. He retreated in a rage. We had bought a little time, but at the main door, the monsters were pounding like beasts. It gave way. The door buckled, revealing their rotting hands. I gripped my steel rod, full of anguish. If they got in, it was our end. Suddenly, Arthur gave me a hard tug and pointed west. "What is that?" I squinted and made out a small dark speck approaching, followed by a deafening roar. A helicopter? Where the hell did that helicopter come from at a time like this? But the noise of the blades drowned out the growls and the curses. There was no doubt. "First we have to finish off this scum," Arthur roared. Lunging toward the stairs, Silas leaned out swinging his axe. Arthur blocked the blow with the steel. The metal cracked, leaving his arm numb from the impact. I lunged at him, smashing a brick into Zach's face. He screamed, tripped, and fell right on top of the zombie. It immediately sank its teeth into him. He let out an agonizing scream, trying to break free, but it was already in vain. Suddenly, shots rang out, cold as ice. The shots echoed down below, freezing me in place. I saw the zombie climbing the door fall, with its head blown to pieces, and then more shots rained down from everywhere at the monster on the stairs. Zach's zombie's head suddenly exploded. Terrified, Zach collapsed to the ground. Silas yanked him up to flee, but another bullet pierced his hamstring, and he fell to his knees with a thud. "Get down." It was the army. Without us noticing, Arthur had clung to the water tank to pull himself up. His glasses were clouded with dust, but his eyes shone with an amazing glow. I looked up and saw a moss-green helicopter hovering over the rooftop space, the emblem on the fuselage flashing under the sunlight. The cabin door swung open wide, revealing a machine gun barrel. Tongues of fire devoured the air, sweeping with precision through the zombie horde down below. Those monstrosities that just a moment ago were frantically pounding on the door were torn apart in an instant, into 1,000 pieces. The swirling wind from the helicopter blades kept us from opening our eyes. Grant leaned against a steel beam, gasping, his arms still trembling and his face covered in blood and dust, but with a smile forming on his lips. Suddenly, he leaned completely against the water tank, clutching his chest, while tears rolled down until they fell onto the back of Arthur's hand. Seeing the soldiers secure the area, I felt my strength completely abandon me. The moment they pulled me into the helicopter, I looked back at the rooftop. The debris lay next to the door frame, with steel bars driven crookedly into the ground. The light of the sun filtered through the thick smoke of gunpowder, casting flickering glints over the blood-stained concrete. The warehouse in the distance continued to emit columns of smoke, like a cigarette about to burn out. It turns out the feeling of being truly alive could be this peaceful. A year later, I sat in silence in the library, facing thick textbooks. For my major, final exams were approaching, but this time they were real exams. Not the end of the world anymore. My phone vibrated nonstop with group messages. "OMG, the basketball team is the champion. No way, incredible. We have to celebrate tonight. Congrats, but Grant and I have a date tonight. We can't make it." I had to respond. "Give it a rest already. You guys have dates every day?" Those small daily jokes filled my heart with a peculiar warmth. The library speakers resonated softly. "Today is National Epidemic Prevention Day. Let us honor the memory of those who passed and express our deepest gratitude to the heroes who rose up regardless of the danger in the darkest moments." Arthur and I locked eyes through the window. On the sports field, students were running and playing ball. Everything was so simple and familiar, but deep down, we all understood that this peace was paid for with blood and tears. That tragedy took too much from us, but it also taught us invaluable things. To prevent disasters, to value the present, and most sacredly, we learned to keep our faith in a bright dawn intact, even in the bleakest moments. Because we are human, because we carry wisdom, courage, and immense love inside. Because even if the world falls apart, we will always have our brothers fighting by our side. The phone vibrated softly again. What do you feel like for dinner today? I'll make it. Anything is fine, Mom. Everything you cook is delicious. What a flatterer you turned out to be, always knowing how to cheer me up. I'll make the pork stew you love so much. I smiled slightly. Being alive, it feels so good. Having my family is wonderful, and having my brothers by my side is great. The end of the world is finally in the past, and our story is only just beginning.